What's up, guys? It's Wilson, also known as Designedbywil. So where have I been? Mainly just uni projects and client projects. The deadlines have been mad for the past 2 weeks, but as promised, I am back with the luxury brand, and this time we're going to be doing a fall/winter collection, and it's just going to be add-on from all the primary basics or like everyday design wear that we had. Video where I showed you guys in depth on how to make that. Now this one won't be in depth in itself. This will just be a basic walkthrough of how I design these sort of collections and like my thinking process. To the right of me, I always have my Notion board open or some sort of Pinterest for reference when I'm designing, because you never want to be stuck in a creative like bubble 2 hours or 3 hours into your work. Now this did take me a little while to design. It was around 4 hours across like 2 days, mainly because like I said, I'm just extremely busy at the moment. So finding time in my day to record these videos for you guys is getting a little bit tough, but I will make the effort because you guys deserve it. So yeah, let's get right into it. The first design is going to be inspired by old postal stamps like from London and geometric shapes that help to frame the actual type when placing it together within a logo, so to speak. Like for instance, the primary thinking of doing this is to make a logo, but you're not really making a logo. You're just making some sort of like shape or frame for your text. I'm going super fast, but all I'm doing really is just making a column. So once you've made your column, I'm just going to be adding some ribbons and some other things to add to this sort of frame idea for our text. Once we have it how we want, we're just going to duplicate it and then use the right-click rotation tool to rotate it, face the other way. And then we're going to add this center ribbon to the design in itself by just using a rectangular shape and then using an arc tool to shape it, and then finally go in with some lines to sort of create that ribbon that's wrapping around. And the one thing that I'm really bad at, is like perspectives. Like I really suck at perspectives. And the one thing they teach you when you're drawing, like if you ever done like a traditional art class, is to learn perspectives. And you don't know how important that is until you're like 10 years into your professional career and you still don't know how to draw a house properly, or a box or a cube, that simple cube. Then you just lose your mind. So yeah, one thing I could tell you guys to do if you guys are starting out is learn the basics, because basics really are the fundamentals to understand how everything works in Illustrator or anything. Once we got that how we want, we're just going to grab our old logo. So the primary reason why we did the whole video of learning how to design a luxury streetwear brand is to understand our staples and our branding. And now we're going to bring that branding into our other designs, because we need to keep that cohesion. And that's the one thing people don't understand. Like, you don't always have to keep cohesion when it comes to branding, but the first few drops, I think it's really important so people can understand what your brand is and what you're trying to be in terms of like a streetwear brand, a luxury brand, whatever you guys want to be. Just learn how to establish yourself before you start jumping into some crazy stuff. And right here, I'm just going to be creating some sort of emblem or knife to add to the design, because it did look quite empty with just the emblem in itself. And I'm going to be putting the emblem with the knife to add to the whole idea of Sin City, again following my original sketch to the right of me on my Notion, because whenever I'm feeling like I'm swaying too simple or too complex, I go back to my drawing to focus me and understand where I want to go. Now I'm going to be just adding a sort of ribbon to the city of sin at the bottom to add to that whole vintage or mythical look. I'm just making sure I round all the corners off and everything to make that like little black outline bleed of like a paintbrush or something to add to the effect of it being old, and also just using sort of fonts that would be in that type of era. Most of the things that I am doing within this video is all stuff that I taught you guys in the previous luxury streetwear brand. So there's a lot of use of the warp to make things rounded and stuff like that, warp effect tool, and also things like using the envelope distort tool or envelope clipping mask sort of, to build these projects, because it's all relative, and those are the things that I tend to use the most. And things that I tend to use most I've already really explained in depth. I can't keep explaining it in every single video because I just bore myself to death. But I know you guys are introductory into design, well, some of yous, and some of you guys need that extra like push or lean into design, because I've got a lot of comments and a lot of like private messages asking if I do one-on-one teaching in terms of design, and I just don't do that at the moment, mainly because I don't have time, and I do plan on doing that in the future. Right now, I'm just actually cleaning up all the miscellaneous lines and stuff like that from using the shape builder tool. And that is the one downside of the shape builder tool. It always leaves these little, like, can't say the word, but these annoying things around, and you have to go and fix them. You can see me here fixing them and then pressing Command Y to look at the line work, making sure it's all clean, even though it's my fault that I decided to use a shape builder to fill all these lines in for some reason, because I'm crazy like that. But yeah, you can see me here going in with the Command Y, looking at the line work, because you never can get rid of everything. I'm just letting you know, you can never get rid of everything, so use the shape builder with caution. Once we have that cleaned up and all ready to go, we've essentially got the centerpiece for our design. Now, looking back, I think I should have added a different shape around this to add this sort of crest identity or something to the design, because it does look quite empty, and you see me later on trying to fill it in with stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to make this little front piece. It's just going to be Thoughtless Sin, just this little emblem or crest of some sort, just to add to the front of the design. I don't want to put just a simple Thoughtless logo on the front because it's kind of boring at this point. I feel like I'm going to be overusing it after I've just spent 2 minutes talking your ears off about cohesion. I'm deciding not to use a brand. Lastly, I'm just gonna center the design, and I'm gonna add everything onto the mockup from the mockup pack, obviously. And I do this when I'm designing now because I have access to this mockup. Is I place my designs before I finalize them onto a mockup to see if I can add anything, and if it looks too empty or if it looks too boring, I'll add something. Like I was gonna get rid of this thoughtless like badge originally, but lucky I saved it and I popped it onto the mockup, because after seeing it on the mockup, I'm like, yeah, this looks pretty sick. Honestly, it looks like some sort of staff uniform, and I feel like that's where most designs are going to nowadays. It's like sort of this uniform look, especially when it comes to like essentials and like stuff like that. It's all very basic stuff that you can wear every single day, and I feel like people like that because they don't have to think about stuff. They want simplicity, and humans tend to go towards convenience. But yeah, that's why I feel like these uniform type of designs have progressed so much within 2022 and 2020, especially with the whole minimalist movement. It just works together. Let's get straight into design 2. Now for design 2, we want to go with a more heavy graphic based type of design that just shows the branding on it. More so like this is going to be like the differential or the more so contrast piece in the collection, where you look at it and be like, oh, that's a cool shirt, you know, just to lead into the collection more, so to speak. And it's going to be a little bit different from everything else. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Most of the time, I would recommend you guys using the pen tool for the selections, but I'm selecting out a lot of hair here, so I just used the lasso selection tool to get more so like a rough outline, and then go in with a separate brush tool to add those hairs back in. There is a more delicate way of getting the perfect strands of hair. However, that way is a lot more tedious. It's using channels and stuff like that. And even with that way, I would have to select the head out anyway. So there's no point of me going in sort of that direction. So I just thought of using the lasso selection tool and then brushes to go in and add sort of like fake hair back into the design itself, just to add to the project. I don't want it to look super clean, because when you cut out hair super clean, it just looks kind of off. After I've got the head cut out of the design, you can see my sketch in the Notion board. I'm just going to add a threshold to make it look more vintage, make it look like a drawn on poster. And then I'm going to go in with the curves and play with the colors so the composition looks more realistic in terms of just the head. Yet again, we're trying to make it look like a drawing that was stamped multiple times or screen printed. And then we're just going to grab some sort of black texture to add to the design in itself. Yet again, it is to add to that more washed or multiple print type design. And at first I was going to add some sort of like bullet hole going through the tiger. I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. The sketch that I have to the right, it says death to my enemies at the bottom. And that's what I'm going with the motif of this, like the whole synesthetic and everything. So I'm keeping that inside the collection in itself, and I don't want to do too much. But yeah, I tried to add this blood to the tiger and it was working, but I'm like, that's just too graphic. We don't want to make people feel uncomfortable with the t-shirt. So yeah, after all those trials and error of blood, I decided to add in the logo, and then I just used blending options, and this blue was already selected. This is such a beautiful blue and it works so well with the design. I decided to put all the other elements into a folder and then put the effects as a clipping mask onto that folder. That way it would be easier to make adjustments to the elements rather than worrying about the colors and tones for each layer. And that's a little hack. So if you're working with multiple layers and you want them all to look the same, pop them in a folder and then add the effects to the top of the folder as a clipping mask. That way you can edit as much as you want. Now I'm just going in with this blue to make it look more distressed and stuff like that. I thought about adding more colors, but then it was going to be too much of a clash, so I just thought of adding a black to composite the blue that's going on here. and add to the design. Now I use this blue as the primary color for the collection later on, just because it works so well overall. I then go in and just add some text, some sort of graffiti font, and then I just warp it in Photoshop. I wish I did warp it in Illustrator, because when you warp text in Photoshop, it just looks distorted, and you can sort of tell depending on how close you are to the graphic in itself. But yeah, I do recommend doing everything that has to do with text in Illustrator and then just copying it into Photoshop. I'm just playing with the different blending options to see how this will look. As you guys can see here that I'm struggling, but it is. Once we've got that how we want it to look, we're just gonna put it into the tiger. And I'm going to put the text into the tiger's mouth just by using a mask, and then going in with a black brush and removing some of the words around the teeth to make it look like it's in the mouth in itself and the tiger's biting onto it. This was by far my favorite graphic, by the way. I don't know why, it just works so well. And it also reminds me of brands like Kenzo, where they have this sort of heavy graphic type feel, and then they just have the basic Kenzo on top. And it's what most like luxury brands do. They usually have like this odd graphic and then just Louis Vuitton, and people tend to buy it because it's more so like a statement piece to the design. I'm also using displacement maps in Photoshop. As you can see, I'm just scrambling to find my displacement maps because I've got a new laptop and I had to transfer all the files. It was around 200,000 files or something. Even something, it was like 500,000 files, and everything got discombobulated. So it's just a hard transition trying to get all my files where I'm used to them being at. And yeah, this is the design. This is basically it, design 2. It was a lot more easy, I guess, to get the look. And we're just gonna recreate that whole effect onto the type and then place that onto the back of the t-shirt, and then we'll have design 2 complete. Lastly, we're just gonna place the design onto a mock-up. I'm just adding these designs to the library rather than exporting them as a PNG. That's why I recommend getting the Adobe Creative Cloud, because you can do this as opposed to pirating the software or something, because I know how hard it can be. Some people do that, but yeah. And then I can just see how it looks like on a mock-up to see if I'm happy with the placements, and play with the colors. But yeah, other than that, design 2 is complete. Now we're going to move on to design 3, which is going to be influenced by the same idea of like the emblem slash crest, but this one's going to be more so inspired by the whole Brisbane city aesthetic and where the brand was founded, I guess. And we're going to play on that whole motif, and we're going to actually be doing some sort of like vintage postcard emblem. Like I said in design 1, that was the main inspiration, but this is also going to be like a full visualization of that look, I guess. Nothing too crazy. I just start off with a simple image trace, and this is going to be in the center of the design. Now it's time to design the crust around it. I did have a lot of issues with this sort of like framing, mainly because I wanted it to look unique, but I ended up doing all types of crazy unnecessary stuff that took hours out of my day for some reason, which is a learning lesson. Like I said before, once I start straying away from the design, I like to go back and look at my sketch to bring me back to the focal point and exactly what I'm trying to do. I tried making the sort of like crazy sort of outline, but it just wasn't working, so I gave up on it, scrapped it, and went back to the drawing board. After getting the shape that I wanted, I was ready to go in and start making the actual emblem in itself. You can see here that I opened Pinterest. Once you see me open Pinterest, my brain is fried at that point, and I've just given up on the design in itself. So yeah, we've opened Pinterest now, and it's time to bring the design together. And all I need is just that one thing that I'm missing, whether it's a font, a shape, or even a certain color, to just spark a sort of inspiration for me, and then I can build the whole project around that certain particular thing. Font after font after font after font. I just couldn't get a certain font to match this sort of aesthetic, and it was driving me crazy, until I just thought to myself, don't be doing too much, and just stick to the whole premise of the actual design. Now it's called City de Brisbane, or City of Brisbane, just like a French translation, I guess. And that was the whole aesthetic of it. And you can see me here just looking at other badges and how they have their placements. And we're sort of trying to recreate that, I guess, but in a more simple form. And we do get to it in the end, but it is a long process. Just like the shape in itself, I decided to just focus on the colors of the actual emblem and whether that could spark an idea for the actual typography. So I stayed away from using any type at the moment and just went to these numbers, to match the color. All I did was add an offset and then another offset to make this sort of picture frame for the design in itself. Now looking at this really does look like the PSG logo, like the Jordan one, mainly because of the colors, but I didn't even have that in mind until I'm recording this voiceover right now. But yeah, this step really helped me in figuring out exactly where I wanted to take this, from the sketch all the way to the final design in itself. I finally found a font that I liked, and it was sort of like this interesting type that I don't use that much. I downloaded it because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna need this one day, and lucky I kept it because it was almost perfect for this project in itself. It just adds some sort of contrast to the old English type font. And I'm just using some guides here to level out the design in itself. But then I end up just going to the basic CDD, and then Brisbane being the big focal point of the type, which is always good in design. Have a strong focal point and you should be okay. Now, I wasn't 100% set on the design in itself, so I just added it to a mock-up and also put the Thoughtless branding next to it just to see how everything would look together, and this ended up turning out pretty sick. I then added just the sweatpants or regular pants, as opposed to any trackies, because I want it to be luxury, and they tend to have pants without any scrunch or seam at the bottom. And yeah, that was the whole look. I then just added the icon to the shorts and just brought the whole design together. with the the classic Thoughtless logo at the bottom of the track bottoms, and then grouped everything together, and that's design 3. Now essentially we have all our designs complete, and you can either expand by adding more mockups onto this or just ending it there. All I did was just color everything, and then I also added in some beanies and a scully to the design so I could bring everything together. Now what you guys don't know is I had a whole jacket that I was trying to make during this project, but it ended up failing miserably because I didn't sketch and I didn't plan it out. I'm going to show you this jacket right here and tell me what you guys think. So this is a jacket. At first it looked cool, but I'm like, damn, this is just one of those like cringy looking TikTok brands with like the whole Arabic theme that don't have any connection to it. So I just scrapped it because it just looked quite ugly and it looked out of place. Like, you can do this style of design and it worked really well, but this was just a rush to fill some space. So I just ended up scrapping the design in itself, and just focusing on the designs that we had and added new mockups in. Like I said, this is a fall/winter collection. So yeah, I think these scullies and beanie was perfectly appropriate. And I also just wanted to show you guys how you could utilize the designs that you already have on new pieces, so you guys don't have to keep like getting new designs. You can also recycle designs so it works on multiple pieces to make that collection. And I feel like a scully just with the branding is very strong in terms of like a look, and I see it all the time on Pinterest, and it's from this one brand. I'm pretty sure it's called Filthy or something like that, and I think they've done an amazing job in terms of like the color range, in terms of scullies and stuff like that. Next, I just added this little quick beanie with the emblem on the shirt, Sin City. Just added in the color from the tracksuit, and bam, call it a day. That's the collection complete. Now, to bring it back to old times, we're gonna rate all the designs because I miss rating my designs. Now, the first one is gonna be the blue t-shirt, long sleeve. I think the design is awesome, but I also do think that the back, even with the whole graphic, is looking quite empty. If we added in some sort of shape around this, it would look better, just to add to the project, or even filling the lines. After I said filling in the lines was horrible, but yeah, I just feel like something is missing in terms of the bag. Maybe making it smaller, adding a circle or shape somewhere just to make it feel complete. Design 2 is the tracksuit. This is a 10 out of 10. This tracksuit is amazing. The blue shirt, forgot to rate it. I think it's a solid 6, but this black tracksuit is a 10 out of 10. It uses the original branding, but we now have a different motif in there, which is the emblem. The colors are solid, and if this was printed, this would be sick. The beanies, you can't go wrong with a scully, so that's a solid 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. Beanie is a 10 out of 10. You can never go wrong with the beanie with just a simple logo in front for branding. T-shirt, I think that's a solid 8 out of 10. I like the t-shirt, but it is a very heavy contrast. Like I said, that was the whole primary purpose of the shirt in itself, so we can't damage it too much. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I do miss you guys, and I will be uploading constantly again, sort of within a week or 2 week range. Won't take this long again because I was just really busy with uni. Just gotta get better with time management. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and you learned something, or you just found it cool. Let me know in the description which one was your favorite, and I'll see you guys when I see you. Thank you. Peace.